Welcome, everybody. It is my pleasure to be here with you. And it is also my pleasure to welcome my co-host, Michael. I will soon introduce him. However, I first want to introduce myself for those of you who do not know me. My name is Pamela Weichman. I am the Director of Education and Artist Services at WheatonArts. I am a white female in my 30s with long brown hair and blue eyes, and I'm currently wearing a green shirt. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I am broadcasting from Southern New Jersey, which I recognize as traditionally the land of the Lenni Lenape. I'll be monitoring the chat throughout the program for your technical and your general questions. Links to additional resources or anything that we talk about that we have links to will be posted in the chat. The chat is also available for you afterwards. Please do email me. I will share that at the end of this program if you would like to have the chat sent to you. If you would like to pose a question to either Michael or Pepe, you can do so using the Q&A feature in Zoom. I will also be monitoring the chat in case questions come through there. Should you lose connection for any reason, please close down all of your windows, go back to the original email with your link, and then join. We like to thank our sponsors, PNC Arts Alive and the Art Alliance for Contemporary Glass, for their support of this program. Through membership, donations, and shopping at shop.wheatonarts.org, you too can show your support of this program and WheatonArts. Please consider exploring these options so we can continue to offer free programs such as this one. It is my pleasure to introduce my co-host for this program, Michael Esposito. Michael is the co-founder and long-term board president of the Latin American Cultural Roots, an arts organization serving Philadelphia's area's Latino community since 1991, which is dedicated to preserving and promoting the diverse cultural heritage of Latin America and the Caribbean. His music collection and research interests were inspired by his years spent in Colombia and by his interactions with musicians and dancers of various Latino communities in Philadelphia area where he lives. Michael, thank you so much for joining us.
And thank you, Pamela, for a nice introduction and for kicking us off. So, but the real star of the show, so to speak, is Pepe Santana. And so we're going to introduce him. He was born in Ecuador. He moved to the US in the 1960s. And since that time, he's been kind of gracing our soils with the, the presentation of authentic Andean music. And I can say, that, since I've seen him perform, that he has like very, very broad and as well as detailed knowledge of the subject matter. So I don't think there's any question you could throw at him related to Andean music that he won't be able to answer. So essentially, he has performed in various groups as well, and has, let's say, just the resume that you see here kind of speaks for itself. Okay, so for example, the group Inkai is the group that he started, which deals with traditional music from Bolivia, Peru, and Ecuador. So, but as I mentioned, his interest in the Andes goes just beyond those three countries. So we can talk a little bit about Colombia, Venezuela, Argentina, and Chile as well. I mean, any of those parts of Latin America that are part of the Andes mountain region, which extends practically from Caracas all the way down to Tierra del Fuego. It is, very extensive and a lot more varied than any of us really can comprehend. I mean, you have to, I think, be a resident or at least have had that sort of experience to really, really fully comprehend it. So Pepe is going to do his best to kind of give an overview, you demonstrate some of the music on the many instruments that he plays, and he'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have. We'll get to as many as we can. I have a few of my own, but I'm going to give preference to yours. So without any other introductions, I'm going to hand it over to Pepe to, to begin his presentation. Pepe, take it away.
Thank you very much. I have to start by sharing the screen. During this hour or so, I am going to somehow synthesize or condense different factors about Andean music. I cannot really cover all what I wish I could, no matter what country. But before I go into that, I want to review the geography and quick story, a background, before I get into the music. So let's start with that. We know where South America is located. We know where North America is located. There are 3 countries in North America: Canada, United States, and Mexico. I'm not insulting your intelligence. You know all those things. But sometimes they don't know. Central America has 7 countries. South America has 13 countries. But we are going to concentrate on the western part of South America, the area of the Andes Mountains range. And from those countries, there are 7 Andean countries. I will pick up 3 of them and concentrate on them. I will also talk about Venezuela, Colombia, Chile, and Argentina. Why did I pick up those 3 countries? In the past, it was difficult to reach the west coast of South America, but it was easier to get to the east coast, which means that the cultural influence from Europe or Africa was easy. It was very simple. It was not so with the western part of South America. It was difficult to get to countries like what is today Peru or Chile or Ecuador, for that matter. What does that mean? That geographical isolation has permitted to keep alive many of the traditions in these areas of the Andes. Traditions like music, food, dancing. The difference is very well marked in comparison to the other Andean countries. That's why I picked these 3 countries. But as I said before, I will talk about the northern and the southern countries also. The area of Ecuador and Peru, Bolivia are well known for all the archaeological sites that are worldwide known, and also for the traditional music in Ecuador, in Peru, and in Bolivia. The music of South America, especially in this area of South America, goes back for hundreds of years. This illustration was taken from a clay vessel of the Moche culture in Peru, and is telling us about musicians that play panpipes, trumpets, and flutes. In the past, they didn't have cameras that would record the presence of a musician, especially regarding the percussions. Percussions were also made with perishable materials, so you don't find them in tombs and grave sites. But we have an evidence of what a musician looked like at time. Little has changed because today we have a musician doing exactly the same thing as their ancestors did. Trumpet players from the past. This is long before the Spaniards came. Flute players from the past and from the present. Panpipe players from the past and from the present. The people of the Andes, they pride themselves with the history, with the background. You remember the Inca culture. When they think about it, they feel happy about it, but they feel sad when they learn what happened to them. The Spaniards came. They didn't come to really do good for the people. They just wanted to take the riches out of the people of the Andes. And that was at the cost of thousands and thousands of lives. The idea of taking the gold, especially, was in demand at that time. This is a photograph of Lake Guatavita in Colombia. In this lake happened to, in the past, hold special rituals with El Dorado, or the man of gold, the golden man. Everything was gold. And with the time they say that the gold was put in the bottom of this lake. When the Spaniards found that out, they didn't hesitate in making a notch on one side of the lake to empty the water and reach the gold. They never found anything. But what did we get from the Spaniards? We got a new faith, we got a new language, and we got the most beautiful things that we think we managed to get from them. The instruments with strings. Until the arrival of the conquistadors, we didn't know anything about string instruments. See that little animal is called armadillo. And in Bolivia, is a source of food for the people. But the back of the armadillo is hard. It's like bone. You don't eat that. So the natives managed to create their own string instrument. They copied the shape of the guitar, and in the back they put the shell of armadillo. So it's interesting to see how much they managed to adapt to the European influence. And today we can see many natives of the Andes playing instruments with strings, like in the case of this Tarabuqueño from Bolivia, or these mestizos from Peru. By the way, I mentioned the word mestizo. Mestizo denotes the mixture of the European and the native people. The native people are called mestizos when they are mixed-blooded. And the same thing happens with the music. The blending of the native winds and the European strings produce what we know today as mestizo music. This is in Ecuador, in the marketplace. Again, we didn't reject the European culture, but that doesn't mean we didn't stop emphasizing in our children to keep alive the tradition. This young fellow from Bolivia is practicing on his panpipe. Perhaps one day he will become a grown-up musician that would be entertaining his community or possibly tourists that are passing by. So the idea of playing the ancient sounds is very much alive today. It has not disappeared. Percussion or winds, it doesn't matter. In the very highlands of Peru, we can see the people playing their wind instruments with percussions. That doesn't mean that they may not have a transistor radio in their pockets. But when it comes to do their thing for the community, they do it the way the ancients used to do it. When they come to the towns, the same thing. They bring their flutes, their drums, and their music, and they're dancing with them in the manner that used to be done for hundreds of years in the past. The music of the Andes is functional, which means it's danceable. No matter how slow or sad, it's danceable. Here we see a group of danzantes from Ecuador. They are celebrating Corpus Christi. Very important to know that. The influence of the Catholic Church pushed them to overlap the religious celebrations with the ancient indigenous celebrations. Like Corpus Christi, close to the winter solstice down there in the month of June was one of them. And like that, the music was also affected because the names of rhythms began to take another name. I will cover that a little bit later. But the music that is played today still continues to be collectively. It has to be in groups of people. This happens mostly in the areas of Bolivia, Peru, and Ecuador. And at one point during the year, they would gather together and bring the force of the meaning of this tradition when they celebrate the Inti Raymi, or Festival of the Sun, especially in Lake Titicaca. And they have enactments of what the offerings were to the sun at the time of the Inti Raymi celebration. We should not forget that our tradition, our past, was glorious. Yes, it was interrupted, but it was glorious. Anybody who has been in Machu Picchu will wonder for the rest of their lives, how did they do this? We also have cities in the Andes, very modern cities, with anything you want from the modern world. But if I have to bring you to the traditions, I will have to go to small hamlets like that, away from the cities, where I think a lot of their traditions are very, very much alive. And music, of course, is tremendously related to nature. And this happens in all the Andean countries. Well, I have arrived to a chart that is basically a cross-section of the different kind of instruments that we have in the Andes. The three groups, the percussion instruments, I just simplified this in there. Lots of percussion instruments in the Andes. Same thing with the string instruments. I just picked up the charango as an example. But what does really reflect the traditional music are the wind instruments, the panpipes, the flutes, and the whistles. Now, as I told you before, I will start playing music from samples of music from Venezuela, Colombia. This is a chart of the percussions that we have. I don't want to bore you with this thing. But I will start with Venezuela. And then I will go to Colombia. Then I will go to Argentina. And then I move to Chile. Why do I do this? Because these countries really have a lot of European influence in their culture. And I have picked up a musical instrument that is quite typical to the country, like in Venezuela, the cuatro. Why is the cuatro so important? Because many of the other Andean countries through the past 4 or 5 decades have assimilated the sounds of the cuatro, and they have incorporated the sound of the cuatro in their music. The same thing happens with the tiple in Colombia. By the way, the Venezuelans have quantities of string instruments, the harp being one of them, the bandola being one of them. But I picked up the cuatro just to give you a little flavor of what the sound of the Venezuelan is. And then I will move to Colombia, the same thing with the tiple. The Colombian is especially outstanding because they have so many different types of music. Music from the Pacific coast, music from the Atlantic coast. But what defines the Andean music from Colombia is what they call música del interior, music from the interior. And there are 3 instruments that come out and stand out when you hear the music of del interior from Colombia. The tiple, the bandola, the guitar, right? That's typical instrumentation for música del interior the Colombia. So I'll give you some flavor of what the tiple is like. And then in Argentina, Argentina really doesn't have something that would tell me is typical from Argentina. So I picked the guitar because with the guitar, they had managed to push many of the Argentinians' music towards the north, towards Bolivia. And the Bolivians have assimilated some rhythms from Argentina, as well as the Argentinians have assimilated some rhythms from the Bolivians. This is quite common in border towns like that. The same thing happens in Chile. Chile is quite special also, because if we talk about Andean music and Andean inhabitants, in the southern part we have the Mapuche indigenous. Mind you that the Mapuches are not recognized by the Chilean government, yes. I mean, the constitution don't recognize them. And they are put aside somehow. It's kind of sad, but they do have their own tradition. So I picked up an instrument called the guitarrón chileno. It's a sort of baroque guitar. So you'll get a flavor of it. From Bolivia, I picked up the charangos. From Peru, I picked up the bandurria. And from Ecuador, I picked up the mandolin. So these are the three countries we will be talking about after I do Venezuela, Colombia, Chile, and Argentina. So I will leave you with these sides of the Andes mountains, so you can dig for some inspiration.
Okay. I just want to mention something. Sophia made a comment about the cuatro as a Puerto Rican instrument also. And I know that the same name is used, but the instruments are different. So, yeah.
The cuatro from Venezuela is different from the cuatro of Puerto Rico. Completely different.
Right. Yeah.
And the cuatro of Puerto Rico uses metal strings.
Okay.
The Venezuelan cuatro uses nylon strings. And the Puerto Rican cuatro has lots of strings, while the Venezuelan cuatro has only four strings. So we'll go into that.
Okay.
And let me start in. I will close my presentation there.
Okay.
And let me start. This is the cuatro. As it's a very simple instrument, 4 strings. If you want to find some similarity to this instrument, you can go to the Mexican jarana, perhaps to the ukulele. The cuatro is played in the plains of Venezuela and Colombia, and I could say in the Andes mountains of those two countries. Today there are many musicians from other Andean countries playing the cuatro. They use it to embellish the rhythms of the repertoire of folk music that they play. It's also an instrument that accompanies only, most of the time, the singers, other musical instruments like the harp, the bandola llanera, the piano, the flute, the guitar, the mandolin. Occasionally it's used also to play some leading melodies. Now, we go to Colombia. As I told you before, Colombia has so many beautiful instruments. Why do I play the string instruments? Because it denotes the influence of the European in our music. And I thought I would just briefly touch base on this before I get into the Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia kind of thing. So, this accompanies the bandola, this accompanies the mandolin. That's the way it's played. But occasionally, again, like with the cuatro, they can play melody. The following rhythm is known as guabina. The tiple, like the cuatro, is also used to accompany other instruments. Occasionally, melodic lines can be heard played on the tiple, like in the case of this following rhythm known as bambuco.
Okay. I got a question. I think this is a good time um, to ask it. It's from Gerardo Rasumne, the gentleman from Argentina who dances very well the tango. We've known each other for years. So he asks, is there any instrument other than the tiple with, he used the word sympathetic strings in South America?
That's something else. When you get to Chile, that's where you find the sympathetic string.
Okay, okay.
In Chile, okay. But now let me go to Argentina.
Okay.
As I said before, the guitar is a very important instrument in Argentina.
Mm-hmm.
The northern part, you can see people playing charangos. Okay, the northern part comes to Bolivia. They have Quechua communities, and they create their own rhythms over there. And you can claim that that's the Argentinian Andean music. For instance, the following has the rhythm of carnavalito. De arriba vengo, soy de la puna, carita y luna, flor de amancay. De arriba vengo, soy de la puna, carita y luna, flor de amancay. En mis alforjas traigo esperanzas, sueños y penas, palomita. En mis alforjas traigo esperanzas, sueños y penas, palomita. That is the flavor of the Argentinian Andean music. But again, there are rhythms in Argentina, like the chacarera, for instance. They were pushed north. In fact, many Bolivians play chacarera in the southern part of Bolivia.
Yeah, in Tarija, yeah.
Exactly. But now let me give you an example of a chacarera from Santiago del Estero. In Santiago del Estero, there are communities that speak Quechua, and they sing chacareras in Quechua. Ay kuchispa misahama, chapichaypi wakasichas, atipuyki ashka mishkita, ay kuchispa misahama, ay kuchispa misahama, chaypi wakasichas, chacarera, chacarera de Cabuy entre las breñas, canta, canta, playivera por la selva Santiago. sample of a chacarera with Quechua lyrics.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting, really.
That's music from Argentina. Now,
Okay. I have a question that I want to ask you at this point. Sophia asks that, she understands about the European indigenous interaction in the Andean music, but she wants to ask about the contribution from the African diaspora. There are certain areas where there are some like in the Valle de Chota, right? In Ecuador, and then from an area they call Noryungas in Bolivia, where they have the Saya Negra.
They have their own how do you call it, structure music.
Mm-hmm.
They have their own instrumentation and their own dancing, but that's different. And tonight we're talking about Andean music.
Right. So that's not quite in that same category, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Let me go now to Chile.
Okay.
¿Dónde está Gerardo? Okay. This is the guitarrón chileno. It has 25 strings, but from the 25 strings we have 4 that are sympathetic on the side, and the melody has to go through these sympathetic strings. As we have, for instance, this instrument has 2 sets of strings, the bordones and the diablitos or sympathetic strings. The idea of Chilean cueca. Okay. So we have an idea of what the sound of Chile should be, because unfortunately the guitarrón is not played as much as is the charango, for instance.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Gerardo had a comment that he wanted to share. He said that sometimes when he travels in Argentina, he would meet someone, he would ask them if they played an instrument, they'd say no, and then they would pick up a guitar and just play it like a virtuoso.
Exactly. That's the thing. So what I have shown you, some instruments that really can be seen easily, very popular.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that Venezuela, Colombia, or even Argentina don't have more instruments. I have heard harpists in Argentina that's incredibly wonderful, as guitar players. The same thing in Colombia, Venezuela, virtuosos, unbelievable. Okay, let me go back. We'll start with Bolivia, right?
Okay.
Bolivia, let me pick up a whistle that is quite common, and the music usually played during the carnivals. The instrument is called tarca, made out of wood, mostly mahogany.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a whistle. But this is played in groups of 40, 50 musicians, and it can be really loud. Plus the percussion, plus the singing. But you're going to hear just one of them. that is the tarka, and it's usually played with a larger one in fifths. So they have two tonalities, different tonalities, playing the same melody. That can be really overwhelmingly.
Yeah, I've heard recordings where it sounds like tarkas are harmonizing and then they play along with bombos. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wombos with snare drums.
Hmm.
That's important. And the singing, of course, the singing.
Hmm.
A very popular dance also. But now we go to the panpipes. The panpipes in Bolivia and Peru, somehow they have similarities because they are by the border. You know? But the characteristic of this panpipe is that it's divided in the male and the female.
Hmm.
The female usually has an extra pipe, right? So in order to play the scale, we will have to go from the female to the male. And so on. So when the melodies are played, we have a larger panpipe, again, the male and the female. And they have panpipes now 5 feet long. But panpipes, a whole variety of them. It's not only the length of the pipe or the scale of the notes also. But let's see.
Question for you. Have you seen all of these, or like a really large variety of these instruments being played by the same ensemble? Let's say the different sizes of the panpipes.
Yes. It's a treat to see the whole ensemble playing. You see, these things have their own set choreographies when they are played collectively.
Mhm.
They have affairs, usually in circles, and they dance. Have the females panpipe, the male panpipe, they alternate and they move. But they have to know exactly what the moves are. It's not the casual thing. They know those things.
Right, and like one of the things I was thinking is that oftentimes you'll see a video, let's say on YouTube, and you'll see, let's say, a group of 4 or 5 people playing, and it sounds nice and everything, but I don't think it reflects like what the the music is, let's say, in the festivals when you have these really large groups of people.
I agree. It's difficult to establish at what point you are listening to authentic music,
Mhm.
especially with the influence of electronics and a whole invasion of videographers.
Mm.
So everything becomes like a show. They
Right.
prepare us for a show more than anything else. So you really have to go to the special celebrations,
Mhm.
patronal celebrations, and see how this thing is done.
Mhm.
Because when the carnivals come, people not only dress colorfully now. The influence of Brazil and New Orleans is
Mhm.
such. In the Andes, traditionally, you won't find the girls wearing miniskirts. No, no. But now, when you go to the carnivals in Bolivia, Peru,
In Oruro, yeah.
shorter the skirt,
Right.
the better,
Right.
more exciting. So that somehow changes the real meaning of the tradition.
Right.
What can you do? You know, the people want to look, and they please them. That's the whole thing. But the saddest part is, I say, that tends to curtail, put a curtain between what is really traditional and what is modern. So for the people who wants to know the truth about Andean music, they have to realize that.
Mhm.
I don't know if you ever heard John Cohen. You know who John Cohen is?
Oh, you mean the researcher?
Exactly.
Mhm.
You know, it was an interesting when we were talking about this with the music. He
Right.
said one day, he said, Pepe, we have to find a terminology for this kind of music. He said, what? Let's call it Pan-Andean.
Mhm.
And it makes sense. Pan-Andean denotes the undiscriminate use of instruments from any country,
Mhm.
music of Bolivia or Peru or Ecuador. They can use electronic bass, they can use jazz, drums, whatever it is.
Mhm.
It's Pan-Andean. It has an Andean terminology there,
Mhm.
but it's not what you could call a traditional music, traditional sound. Okay, let's move on. Let's see. You like the charangos, right?
Yes. Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, not just me either. I'm sure that our audience likes the charangos also. If they haven't heard them, they'll like them very soon.
I want to start with the largest charango that we have. This is a rather modern invention. It's called ronroco. This is the ronroco charango. It originated in Bolivia some 60, 70 years ago. We can play melodies in it. Or we can accompany. In the countryside, there are other ways of tuning and playing the charango. There is a very popular way among the singers from the countryside. When they sing and they play the charango, they use what they call a calampeado style. The calampeado style incorporates the melody in the strumming. That's the idea. It comes from the valley of Cochabamba in Bolivia.
A question for you about the charango. Is this size charango used more to play melodies than the other ones, or does it really matter?
It's larger. The charango you're talking about is this one.
Okay.
That is the common charango. Everybody plays this charango.
Mhm. Yes, very nice. Gerardo has a question for you.
Yeah.
He was asking about the rhythm. He noticed that the Spanish introduced the 6/8 rhythm, like for example, in the Chilean cueca, and other types of rhythms that you hear in string music. Like especially the cueca is it's known for that. Have you ever run across any like pre-Hispanic, let's say, songs that were played in the 6/8 rhythm, or is that just exclusively a European thing?
I have to digest that question.
Okay. So, like for example, he noticed that most of the pre-Columbian rhythms are 2/4, 2/4 time.
Well, let's think about the cueca.
Mm-hmm.
It's typically import from the samba cueca in Spain.
Right.
No matter where it's played, it has that structure.
Mm-hmm.
It's a structured dance. It has an A, B, C. Yeah. While you take a rhythm from Bolivia or Peru, that's typical from the native people.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have a structure.
Mm-hmm.
No. Then, for instance, the calullo, the guaño,
Mm-hmm.
they just played and they dance any way you want it. Like the tarqueada, when you heard the whistle they played before.
Mm-hmm.
They know they have to go around in circles somehow, but there is not, you have to stop here. It's not that thing.
I guess there's like a follow-up question that I'd like to make. So I imagine that with that type of like Andean music, it probably would be difficult to put it to sheet music, right? Because if it doesn't have a rhythmic structure, it doesn't quite fit. I guess you could try to do it to a certain degree, but if they're just playing the way you described, it may be difficult to do that.
Let me give the audience an advice.
Okay.
Andean music has to be looked from different angles.
Mm-hmm.
If you're interested in indigenous music, that's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is if you're interested in mestizo music.
Mm-hmm.
Now, within the mestizo music, you have the traditional mestizo music.
Mhm.
Again, mestizo when they use any string instruments in it.
Mhm.
But they have a traditional mestizo music now. And they have the contemporary mestizo music today. And a super contemporary with all the electronics and things like that that's happening. So if we go with that vision to here, then we would be able to determine what is really native and what is not.
Mhm.
The mestizo people has managed to utilize the elements of the native music to create their own music, their own rhythms. And they are so palatable for the people that like to enjoy themselves in parties.
Mhm.
Something that doesn't happen with native music.
Mhm.
You know? Because their enjoyment is when they play their music and they dance at the same time. While the other ones, no, the other ones, they record it, put it on YouTube, and they have it. There you have it. That's something that doesn't happen with indigenous music. Yes. Any other question?
Okay. I mean, it definitely has answered mine. I think you have to look at it from a different lens. So I guess maybe, since we're getting close to 7 o'clock, we had a question regarding your upcoming performances. If someone wanted to see your performance, that you've already performed at the WheatonArts, and we don't have anything scheduled in the near future. If somebody wanted to watch you perform, where could they go, let's say, in the near future?
Well, I don't know how you could share my email. and people can contact me through my email.
Okay, I'll ask Pam to do that, like to put it into the chat, and then anybody can contact you. So
I will notify them whenever I am in their area or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But let me continue. How many minutes do we have, Michael?
Well, we have roughly 5 minutes. Do you have more things you can play? I mean, we can go over a little bit. It's not strict, but
there is one thing that you mentioned about the charango with a very shrilling sound. It's from Peru,
mm-hmm.
and it's called chileador.
Chileador, okay.
It has comes from Cusco.
Yeah, I like that sound. I like the contrast between that charango and the others that you played. I mean, I like them all, but
yeah, there's
like for me personally, it's like it's something different from what you would expect, to sound like, if you've heard Andean groups perform.
Something from Peru. sound of the bandurria.
Bandurria. But I think I've heard that instrument, but I couldn't tell you where. It's possible I heard it on a recording and they didn't identify it as such, but you know, it's very similar and it didn't sound like the charangos that you played.
The idea is with this presentation today that people could detect the different textures that we have with the sounds of the string instruments.
Right.
Colombia, Venezuela, Chile, Argentina, and of course, Bolivia, Peru, and Ecuador. We're running out of time, so let me play a wind instrument from Ecuador that is not very much used, but it denotes an interesting kind of combination because there are two whistles and the musician has to play them both at the same time to accomplish harmony. If I like to play this one,
I definitely will have to ask you more questions about that because I like that.
sinus.
Huh?
But now you hear panpipes from Bolivia and Peru. In Ecuador, we have a panpipe. See, in the Peruvian and Bolivian music, the panpipes are blown one tube at a time. You see the arrangement of this one? Right. There's indentations there.
In the different lengths, yeah.
Those are accidentals that enable the musician by blowing two pipes at the same time.
Okay.
Harmonize. So that's the idea. That's the difference between the Ecuadorian panpipe, like the rondador,
right,
and the siku as a kind of zampoña in Bolivia.
Well, I see everybody is saying thank you. So I think that we are we've reached the end, and so I'll hand it back to Pamela to to wrap up and give the I guess if it's a promo for WheatonArts. But thanks everyone for participating. Like the questions, and of course, the presenter really gave us a very nice. It's hard to say introduction because there was so much variety to it, but in reality, as he said, we haven't scratched the surface. So back to you, Pamela.
Thank you so much, Michael, and Pepe. Thank you. That was absolutely beautiful. And like Michael said, so much information to absorb in one setting. So I did place your email in the chat. So you may be getting some emails from people who are interested in seeing other performances by you. And the email is also here on the slide. So I'll give everybody a moment to jot that down if you would like to. Again, the chat can be sent to you. So please do feel free to reach out to me to have that sent to you. Our next Wheaton conversation is going to be with Jackie Sandra Greenwell and Jim Greenwell. and that will take place on Thursday, January 19th. The registration will be up on our email or our website at WheatonArts.org. So please check that out. I would like to thank everybody for joining us. Please visit WheatonArts.org to learn more. And as I said, please reach out to me with any questions, feedback that you may have. My email address is here on the screen. I can be reached at pweichman@WheatonArts.org. Again, thank you so much to Michael and Pepe for joining us for this hour. It has been absolutely
My
lovely.
pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Thank you as well.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay, take care, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.